once you're on an approved road, it will actually turn blue, which it just did right now. So now it's blue, which means I can take my hands off the wheel. Okay, everyone, we are now out on the road in the 2025 INFINITI QX80, and oh boy, there is so much to talk about here in this vehicle. I honestly don't even know where to start. So, so let's just talk about how it drives. So out here on the roads here, we're driving around town, and it's in its standard mode, snow. So I like to drive it honestly around in eco and standard most of the time, as well as personal. They both, I think, are the best options to kind of drive it in on a daily basis, though you definitely do have different options, and they all do quite change the character of the vehicle with this Autographc INFINITI QX80, and that's mainly due to the adjustable steering, to the adjustable engine parameters, as well as this dynamic digital suspension, which is really just adaptive damping style system, but it's a little more advanced. It's continuously monitoring the road environment to really kind of just give you a sublime feel and handle body motions around a lot of corners. So that's all working for you in all these different conditions here. On the road, driving around town, this vehicle handles fantastically. I think it's a great cruiser. It really kind of soaks up a lot of the bumps. It really creates this isolated, calming environment in here, which I think it does a great job at, especially with this air suspension. Though I do have to say, regardless of whatever height you're in, or even with the settings for your adaptive suspension, I think it still has that body on frame nature to it. So, and what I mean by that is that going over some harsh bumps, which we're about to do right now actually, the whole body is kind of going to shake like a school bus in a sense. If you've ever been in a school bus and you're going over some bumps, the whole thing just kind of rumbles around a little bit, you still get that over these hard bumps. Not in a very aggressive way. Kind of, if you're sitting in the rear seats, you do kind of feel like you're being tossed around just a little bit, but it's this little bit of these motions that are a little bit unsettling. But thankfully, they don't feel necessarily harsh. They just kind of do notice it's still there. Nonetheless, overall, when you're on like a smooth patch of pavement right here, it literally feels like you are gliding on the road. And the other amazing thing with this suspension system, specifically with this combination of the adaptive air suspension and the digital suspension system here, is it actually handles really well. You know, driving this vehicle versus honestly even a Mercedes-Benz GLS style or an X7, and those are unibody, they're very long. This is also a very long vehicle. It's around the same size as an Escalade, a short wheelbase, and I don't feel like I'm carrying around a giant rear tail end with me in this particular INFINITI. We'll pop it into sport mode to see if we can get a little bit of exhaust sounds on this turn here. Strong power there for sure. But the interesting thing is that it feels like you're driving like a 2-row SUV, not a 3-row SUV in that sense. That's honestly quite impressive. And the really interesting thing is how they've kind of developed this dynamic steering as well. It feels very car-like. It doesn't necessarily feel like a big truck. And now this giant steering wheel, on the other hand, that's something else to be talking about. But overall, I think the driving experience is fantastic, and the huge amounts of glass around you are just truly incredible. You have so much visibility. Okay guys, so we're about to go out here on the highway. We'll pop it back into sport mode for you guys once again, and I've had my height control display up just to see if it lowers down on the highway to help improve aerodynamics. And like I mentioned before, we have this nice micro suede style headliner, lots of acoustic sound deadening throughout this entire interior to really give you the best sound insulation as possible. So it is very quiet of experience, and no wind buffeting from these mirrors as well. But let's get onto the highway now. Check out how it handles these corners. Really, really impressive body control here. It does not feel like a body on frame SUV. I feel like I can push it way harder than this thing should be able to do around corners. That was one of the first things I noticed when driving the this new QX80. They have dramatically improved how this feels around corners, and really, really impressive stuff there, I have to say, INFINITI. And this is also as part of the stiffness increasing with this new updated chassis. So it's significantly stiffer. I believe, I think 27%, 57% stiffer between like the torsional and lateral rigidity. So that's definitely a nice improvement we have there. And out here on the highway already, you're nice out in the cruising zone. And this is where this car loves to be on the highway. And it actually gets its best fuel economy on the highway as well. So not only are you going to be having a nice, comfortable cruising machine, but it does better on the highway as well. And I really like how this engine is still derived from the VR lineup. It's just essentially an increased size of the VR30 twin turbo that we found in the Q50, the Z, and the Q60. This is just a 3.5 liter, more power, more torque, and it sounds still really good. It has that really iconic VR sound to it, which I think is really, really cool. Now, how is this on the highway? We're going to pop it back into eco mode. As you know, fuel economy isn't the best with this vehicle, even though it has the twin turbo V6 now and not the V8. But one of the incredible things about this is it has the next generation kind of Pro Pilot Assist 2.2, or I think it's 2.2 and 2.1. Really, really impressive system. This is, I would say, akin on par to like a lot of these top tier level driver assistance systems on the highway. You press your little blue button on the left hand of the steering wheel here, you press set, and you are on. So Pro Pilot Assist is now active. You can see that with all of your green indicators right here. That's really nice. But the fun thing is let's set a nice high speed, and once you're on an approved road, it will actually turn blue, which it just did right now. So now it's blue, which means I can take my hands off the wheel. Now, obviously, you have to look forward. You have a camera right here monitoring your eyes to make sure you're always looking forward. You can change your following distance right here. And there's also a lane change assist mode. So if the car thinks that a vehicle in front of you is going too slow, you can press this lane change assist mode and it will move lanes for you into a faster lane to pass the vehicle. And I believe you can also follow a navigation you have set in within the Google Maps within the system in here, which is really, really cool. I used that over on the Nissan Ariya as well, and that worked fantastically on the highway. This is a really good system. Really, really good. I'm glad that Infiniti was able to include this on the new QX80. I think this really, really helps to step up the brand even more because it just works really well. As you can see, very confidently steering around these corners here. I don't feel like it's kind of swaying in between lanes or getting too close to the inside lane or the outside lane. And it will alert you ahead of time if you need to put your hands on the wheel, which you always should have your hands ready. You even just let them rest on the bottom if you need to, which is really nice little comfortable, almost hand rest area now with this Infiniti logo on this gigantic leather steering wheel. But I have to say, this is a pretty impressive system. I like how it shows you all the cars it's seeing around you, and it already wants to change lanes. Like this person in front of us is going too slow, but it's pretty cool. So really no complaints here. You can also use this as that other more lower level Pro Pilot Assist feature, which is basically full radar adaptive cruise control with your hands on the wheel. I'm not going to change lanes because we need to take an exit on this left hand side, but it's very sensitive when you're not paying attention as well. Again, coming around a corner, handling those bumps pretty well. Like I said, you get that chassis shake from that body on frame architecture, but it still manages to handle itself and be very composed going through those corners. It's more of within the chassis and not necessarily on the wheel front. Like you're not feeling any kind of wheel hop or anything like that. It's really just kind of happening within this frame, which I know they've tried their absolute best to kind of hamper out, and they really have done well. But I think these larger, absolutely massive 22-inch wheels may not be helping its case in this particular application. Now, there is one major thing I do want to discuss in this Infiniti QX80, and it's how you interact with this infotainment system over here. So what I'm talking about specifically is this screen. So these screens on themselves are gorgeous. They're huge, they're crystal clear, they're quick to respond, they feel great when you're touching them, and generally I think the graphics are very clear. All that stuff is great. My issue comes in operating this display. I immediately, going in this vehicle, in my seating position, cannot reach it. I have to lean forward to touch this display and use it, which I was like, wait a second, that's not really good. And I don't really want to sit too particularly close because that's also not the best thing you want to do either. So I wish there was like a dial here or something. I'm trying to figure it out, and I'm staring right in front of me, and you have this button right here on the steering wheel which allows you to change this cursor from controlling this display over to this display. But as you can see right there, it didn't work. So I'm going to hold it. It didn't work again. Double press, it works. So I found that double presses back and forth typically will work if it's not working. And then operating the screen is varying levels of easy and difficult depending where you are on the display. So right now you can see this bottom screen is highlighted, so I'm going to try to move it. You can see it's scrolling through these different settings here. Go into the settings, and now it says my steering wheel control cannot be used to access this setting menu. So it immediately becomes irrelevant at that point. So let's see, what about my apps over here? This works. So I can kind of scroll through my apps with this dial here, so I can see my interior light. I can change my interior ambient lighting through here. Actually, no, I can't, because it brings me to the settings on the menu. So now I have to reach out here to change my ambient light color on my interior. So one of the questions I've been asking myself over this week is, what is this thing useful for? Which I'm not too sure. At least these buttons work in the sense of being able to kind of cycle through the different menus, and see, now I can kind of scroll through these menus a little bit. It's a little bit of a cumbersome learning curve style process, I would say here. So it definitely takes some getting used to, and I think it's a little bit distracting at first. Maybe if you want to have that Pro Pilot Assist on and then try it out afterwards, might be the best move for you. But oh boy, it's just a little bit of some taking used to. And it also interestingly works in Apple CarPlay as well. So if I want to go down to that lower screen, I'm going to scroll over to Apple CarPlay plus that, and now I'm in Apple CarPlay, and now it works almost like an iDrive, not an iDrive style controller, but if you've ever been in a Mazdas, those kind of controllers that don't have the touchscreen Mazdas, they kind of just scroll through iDrive. That is what's happening in this QX, or they scroll through Apple CarPlay. That's what's happening in this QX80 we have here. So it's essentially just scrolling through your apps in Apple CarPlay. So you can kind of scroll through all the menus. It takes a little bit of time to kind of get through everything if you ever use those kinds of systems, but I would say it does work well if you don't want to have your eyes off the road and you don't want to be reaching out to touch it. But it's just definitely something to get used to. And one thing is, sometimes you might forget you're in this system and I need to change something up here, and now I'm going to start pressing these buttons, and I have to remember to now select this back over, and now it's not pressing it, so I got to double press it and it brings it back over here. So I think I understand the intentions here. They're kind of trying to make it this Mercedes style M-Book system where you have those little touch pads on both sides of the wheel. You can kind of go back and forth, but this back and forth scenario here with this button here, I don't know, clearly a double press seems to be the way to do it. Actually, I'm just not particularly liking it's not super intuitive, I think is the best way to kind of narrow it down. But anyways, that's one thing I've noticed with this infotainment system. Otherwise, it's pretty good. You know, Apple Maps actually displays in my center display here. So if I'm going to my mapping locations here, it does project Apple Maps. And thankfully, it can get bigger than this. So if I go over to my customized display settings here, and I go to change meter view, I go to enhanced, I'm gonna get the biggest map view I can actually get out of this display. So I can go now back, after hopping through all my settings, going back to this map, and now I have a nice big Apple Maps in the center of my display. It will not take up the whole display like it does on like an Audi or some other vehicles, but I think that's perfectly fine. It's right in your line of sight, and I think it looks quite nice to have up there, and other stuff. And this displays, but this particular one's really cool because it kind of expands on all the menus that you have in your QX80 a little bit larger than the other gauge layout screen. So that's also a nice touch. And the new 9-speed, which I think is a fantastic transmission now. Even in sport mode, it allows you to change gears. Downshifts are quick. Upshifts very slow, but you know, it's a giant body on frame SUV. I wouldn't really say it's meant to be driven with manual mode whatsoever. If you need to use manual mode, I guess you can do it, but hold the paddle back for a little bit and it'll pop right back into D if you need to. If you have a little peak right above here with our fuel economy, it's not particularly good. For a twin turbo V6, you know, some people were like, oh, they're doing this because of fuel economy. I mean, I'm sure it's definitely better than the old V8's fuel economy, probably I think around that 20% range. I don't think it's anything too crazy, but we're still averaging around 15. I think their actual claimed highway or just combined average is around that 17-18 mile per gallon figure. The higher end highway, I believe the best I think this vehicle was able to do in its 4,500 miles of being on the roads was around almost 24 miles per gallon. In the city, you're definitely going to see a lot less miles per gallon as well, because, you know, it's a big vehicle to haul around regardless if this engine's powerful enough. I just really like that classic Infiniti engine sound that we're able to keep in here. Otherwise, guys, thank you so much for joining me on yet another drive of one of these amazing new vehicles we have in 2024. This QX80 is really impressive. It's a huge step for Infiniti up. Hope this momentum that this new QX80 is bringing really helps to push the brand back into like its full existence once again. And I'm really excited to see what else the brand is going to have to offer. This is a really great product. It's a high price tag for this particular Autographc trim. Personally, I'd go with a Sensory or a Luxe at the end of the day. The two are lower trims than this one. There's also a base pure, but pretty good. I'm impressed. As always, guys, thank you for joining me on another video over at Allcarnews, and stay tuned for more coming soon. Cheers.